Menopause brain, rewiring itself. This is the most fascinating concept. I'm Dr. Daniela Steyn. I'm a medical doctor. I've had further training in functional medicine, in lifestyle medicine, in hormonal health. And I'm absolutely fascinated about what I've learned about the brain over the past 20 years. What if I told you that what many women fear most is not a breakdown or a decline, but a rewiring? This is very good news for each one of you sitting here. And then it is also a big responsibility that each one of us have. When we understand what's happening to our brains in this phase of life, we can see it as an update that's in progress. In my clinic, I see women every day, high-functioning women, CEOs, women in C-suite level positions, presidents of their companies, who come to me absolutely devastated. This would be women that are at the peak of their career, and then suddenly, during a meeting, they would forget what they wanted to say, or they would walk into a room and not remember what they wanted to say. During a big presentation, just suddenly forget what this slide is all about. This is an age where women should really step up to the next level, but that women, because of this, often lose quite significant confidence, and rather than stepping up for that promotion, scale down, take an early retirement. It now coincides with a time when women have other hormonal symptoms, where women might have a hot flush during a presentation, or not sleep well due to night sleeps, perimenopausal sleep disruptions. And then because of not sleeping well, this will exacerbate irritability and decrease in concentration, worse brain fog. It is a difficult time. But incredible research has shown us, and I'll put some of the authors, I think, in the talk below. Lisa Mosconi is one of the authors that's done a lot of research into what is happening in the brain in the perimenopausal years. And it really looks at how the brain is rewiring itself. We call it neuroplasticity. So I've been familiar with the term of neuroplasticity all along. I work in a big hospital where people after a stroke, when literally half of the brain died, you can teach the other half of the brain to take over functions of that used to be controlled by the part of the brain that's now dead. And then the other half of the brain that's taking over these functions and learn new things, that your brain's ability to adapt like that, we call it neuroplasticity. But the good news is you don't only have access to a brain that is rewiring and remodeling itself, you also have access to that throughout your life, and even so much more during the postmenopausal phase when your brain is actively rewiring. So what happens in the menopause, during menopause, it doesn't only happen in your ovaries, it also happens in your brain. Because estrogen is not only a reproductive hormone, but estrogen is a master regenerator and regulator of the brain. It controls energy production, it controls your memory circuits, it controls mood stability and neural communication. So when your estrogen shifts, your brain has to adapt, and it can. So sometimes people often come to me. So first of all, it's people come to me saying that they don't feel like themselves anymore. But then when I sit down and ask why do you not feel like themselves? One of the most common things women tell me is brain fog. So brain fog is real, and I'm sorry if your doctor told you that it's not real. Brain fog is real. We can see it on brain scans. Any doctor that has done further training in menopause will know it is real. During the menopause, your brain use less glucose for fuel, and that can affect the memory so that it is temporarily less efficient and while your neural networks reorganize. So this is now when women would say, or you might feel that you walk into a room and you just forget why you're there, or you can't find certain words, or you just feel slower. The important part to know is that it's not degeneration, it's really a transition. Because at the same time, your brain is doing something extraordinary. Your brain is rewiring itself. It is building new pathways. It's adapting its fuel sources, and it's really strengthening resilience within the brain. And this, all in all, we term in the term neuroplasticity. And it means one thing to you. It means that you need to work differently with your brain. There are many things we can do, and I'll touch on each one of them, how we can support our brain better during this transition. And it is a real legit thing to look at. It's not something to just power through, because if you look at women, make up 2/3 of Alzheimer's disease cases. And we now understand that menopause is really a critical window of vulnerability in the brain, but it's also a window of prevention. So what you do during this phase of your life really changed the trajectory of your brain for decades to come. You have way more power to control your brain health than we realized 10 or 20 years ago. Okay, so what actually works is, first of all, we have to feel the brain differently. And we can talk at length about this, but the one would be a Mediterranean-style nutrition to stabilize your glucose and to have healthy fats for neuronal integrity. Healthy fats would be things like Brazil nuts, avocado, raw olive oil, having adequate protein in your diet to stabilize blood sugar, and avoiding processed foods. The next thing that has shown a lot of research to improve cognitive health during this rewiring process is exercise. Exercise increases your brain-derived neurotrophic factor and literally help you to grow new brain cells. And that is where strength training really, really comes in. So during the perimenopause, postmenopausal years, we stop doing cardio excessively for 7 days a week. And I say it very respectfully. I am an Ironman athlete, long distance triathlon athlete. I really work with a big group of people really passionate about endurance events, but I really understand the science as well, that we should cut back on our endurance training and focus on muscle strengthening exercises during this critical transition in our brain, and in this critical years that our brain needs this brain-derived neurotrophic factor to help us grow new brain cells. Next one is to really protect your sleep. Your brain regenerates itself when you sleep. That's when your brain clears itself of toxins. A big thing is that cortisol shrinks your memory centers. All of us do have a lot of stress during the perimenopausal years, aging parents, teenage children, stressful jobs. But research has shown that constant elevated cortisol unfortunately does shrink our memory centers. Good news, there's a lot we can do about it. And cognitive behavioral therapy is one of our most efficient tools in stress management. And I'll get back to that. Then hormone therapy is very helpful. A lot of research how going on to hormone therapy in a critical window, timing matters, personalization matters, but where it can protect your brain health. So talk to your doctor about that, educate yourself, understand the benefit of hormone therapy to brain health. That really is a big one. And then tonight, I want to stand still with cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. This is an incredible tool. So I got introduced to the principle of CBT, I think, yes, in 2010. I did my first training on how to offer cognitive behavioral therapy to patients. I worked in a small town. We had a psychiatrist who would only come and visit once a month and didn't have time to see everyone. And then I wanted to equip myself to help my patients better. So I did further training in cognitive behavioral therapy. And then I learned that this is not only for patients with mental health problems, with anxiety, with depression. So it's fascinating. In the old days, we used to go to a psychologist, psychiatrist every week, talk about your problems. And then some studies have found that for some people, just talking about their problems every week, focusing on their problems, focusing how they didn't grow up in a nurturing environment, focusing on all the wrongs that were inflicted to them in their childhood, actually does not make them better. So then a whole new division of psychology started called cognitive behavioral therapy, where we look at what are the things that we can do to help our brain with this aspect of neuroplasticity that I spoke about to be better. What are the things? There are things that happen in your childhood that really worked against you. But what are the things that you are doing every day in your whole life, in your life, day to day, that's working against you? So maybe you did have a very critical mom growing up. But now, as an adult, you are constantly that critical voice to yourself, commenting on everything you do, criticizing it, not having faith in yourself. So with cognitive behavioral therapy, it really enables us to step back and to see what are the things that we are doing to ourselves that are keeping us away from our goals. And this is actually a very good example. I recommend to many of my patients to read the book by Dr. Kristin Neff called Self-Compassion, where it really explains the actual effect on your brain if you're constantly breaking yourself down, or when you are more compassionate to yourself. The way that you would be compassionate to your children, to a good friend, to a loved one. As soon as we start changing that inner dialogue in our own brain, we give our brain that ability to heal. So self-compassion is just one of the tools. When with cognitive behavioral therapy, the first thing I tell people is to become aware of what's happening in their brains. Quite often we're on autopilot, and especially when women come to me, they just feel that their husband is annoying them, their kids are annoying them, their boss is horrible, and life is just hard. Well, when we work through this cognitive behavioral therapy, we take a step back and we first start to understand what is happening in their brains. And a good analogy that I like to describe this is to see it similar to horse riding. If any of you has ever been riding a horse, when you go for horse riding lessons, you don't just get on a horse and start doing show jumping. You first go to the stables, get to know the horse, get to groom the horse, you walk around the horse, you touch the horse, you care for the horse. Then you sit on the horse. Then you would slowly start to trot on the horse. And only after doing this, getting to know the horse better and better over time, you will start galloping, you will start learning more skills where you can eventually do show jumping. And very similar happen in our brains. When you never stop to get to know your brain, to understand what is happening in your brain, we never get to identify our emotions, understand our emotions, or control our emotions. There's this another analogy of a guy who's riding a horse, and a bystander asks him, "So where are you going?" And the horse rider says, "Oh, I don't know. Ask the horse." And we are doing the same with our minds. We let our mind run amok with us, and a lot of us don't intentionally control our emotions. So good news, I can tell you that you can control your emotions. When you get an emotion, most emotions are just 10 seconds in nature. So say your boss tell you, oh, well done, you've done a good job, and you feel happy about that. It's very short-lived. Then your brain recognizes this as not a threat to your survival, and it lets go of that emotion. Then the next day, when your boss glare at you like that, then your brain says, oh, did I do something wrong? Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to get demoted? Am I going to miss out on my performance bonus? Then your brain hold on to it, recognize it as a threat to your survival, and replay it in your mind. So even though the initial emotion was just 10 seconds, your body, your brain then chooses to hold on to it, replay it, and prolong that. And that is where it's very helpful to start recognizing what's happening in your brain. When are your brain holding on to things that is not helpful? And when to let go of that. And same thing, that it's not an automatic process, the way that you can't just learn to ride a horse with one lesson or be a great pianist with one lesson. You need to repetitively start understanding what's going on in your brain, get support from someone. With cognitive behavioral therapy, you can read more in my book. You can come and see one of our therapists to help you identify, when do you have catastrophic thinking? When you think, oh my goodness, my boss said I'm horrible in this project, so now I'm going to lose my job. I saw my kid vaping, so now next it's going to be drugs, and they're most likely going to drop out of school. Quite often we go into this catastrophic thinking, or we go into all or nothing thinking, that I didn't stick with my diet, I had a glass of wine, so now I might as well give up and grab a bag of chips. So quite often we, without realizing, engage in all or nothing thinking, catastrophic thinking. That's very helpful to step back a little bit, look at what your brain is thinking, identify the thoughts, identify helpful, unhelpful thought patterns, and then we can rewire our brains. So our circuits in our brain just go to the easiest way. That's what we typically do in default. Your brain just go into default thinking. So if you always tend to think something negative, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm likely going to gain weight, oh, I'm having hot flashes, I'm not going to sleep well, tomorrow's going to be horrible, I'm going to be tired. Your brain, every time that you think that, you strengthen certain neural pathways. When we stop and we look at our thoughts, we can replace those thoughts with more helpful thoughts. And it's very similar to you walking in the woods. If you walk in the woods all the time, you create certain pathways through your brain. If you intentionally stop walking on that route and start walking on a different route, a more helpful pathway, then you can create that pathway to become a proper walking route, later maybe a highway in your brain, and the route that you're no longer taking will become overgrown, and it won't be an automated route anymore. So it does take time, it does take effort, but you can literally help your brain to rewire itself. And if you look at this beautiful opportunity that you have now by investing in your own mind, your own health, you can become a happy person. You can be that aunt that everyone loves, that invests in everyone around her, rather than that irritable old aunt that's depressed and anxious, and people don't want to have her over for Easter. So you actually have quite a lot of control into which way your brain is going to go with your intentional thought patterns. And that's part of cognitive behavioral therapy. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. It's such an incredible tool. And specifically in menopause, there's a lot of research that's been done at it. And in our clinic, we have a lot of experience seeing how cognitive behavioral therapy can decrease hot flashes, decrease the intensity of hot flashes, optimize sleep. Cognitive behavioral therapy is more benefit in optimizing sleep than sleeping medication. So that is a great tool that you can have in your toolbox to optimize your sleep is through cognitive behavioral therapy. These are things that you can, with the support of someone else or on your own, work through to help you to become the best version of yourself. It is so incredibly powerful to think about that you can, 5 years from now, you can be the person that you now decided to be. That is incredibly powerful. It's incredibly empowering to know that your brain is adapting, to move away from that fearful thinking, to not start to have anxiety, but to understand what you can do for your cognition to improve, for better performance, for better resilience. So if you're in this phase of life and you feel different, you are right. Things are different. Your brain is changing, but it's not in the way that you fear. Your brain is not declining. Your brain is incredibly powerful. Your brain is rewiring. You're not losing your edge. Your brain is recalibrating. And you are being invited to build a sharper brain. You can do that. Once you understand the menopause brain, you have a lot of power to help shape your own cognitive future. I would like to end my talk tonight for each one of you to walk away with hope. There's not only light at the end of the tunnel, but it can be much better, much more powerful than you ever imagined. Thanks for spending time with me.